Okay. Alright, viewers. Me again. Nighttime. Look, I went looking for the Linux kernel today. I went on oh my god, Ubuntu on Facebook. Couldn't find it. It's not there. The last Linux kernel they did was 16. 17 ain't even up on that page. I googled it. When I went to oh my god, Ubuntu on Google, still couldn't find it. They only had 17 but not 18. So I went to NeoWin and then they claimed they got it. I'm wondering how they got it first before Facebook and LinkedIn and even Twitter got it. But anyway, oh by the way, hello viewers, hello subscribers. What I got for you? Linux 6.18 release, improved gaming, laptops and security. Alright. Plus there's two other articles. There's one on NeoWin and then the one on Pharonics that I will add to this. It says here, it's here. Linux 6.18 is officially released, delivering another sizable set of performance gains, a new hardware support, and a controversial goodbye. It says here, Linus Torvald announced Linux 6.18 release on the Linux kernel mailing list on November 30th, 2025, noting that he did have been happier with slightly less bug fixes noise in this last week of release. There was nothing that made me feel like this need more time to cook. Says here, but since everything looks good, Linux 6.18 is tagged and pushed out. It says, as release go, this is a biggish one, not because it saw more commit than the Linux 6.17 release. It did, but because Linux 6.18 is likely to become the next long-term support LTS kernel, which many cloud enterprise and businesses opt to run. Us desktop schemos, we prefer the latest and greatest if we can get it. So preamble out of the way, onto the key changes in this release that caught my eye. Subtopic Linux 6.18 Linux gaming device improvements. It says here, gaming on Linux is bigger and better than ever, thanks in part to Valve, Steam, and the success of their Steam Deck handheld PC. This fella here, yeah, anyway. It says here, but other handheld gaming devices are available too. Linux 6.18 bolster support for them. A new dedicated hardware monitoring HWMon driver for GPD handheld gaming devices included, which should mean those running Linux on devices like GPD Win4 and WinMax 2 benefit from improved fan control and sensor reading. Says here, the Asus ROG Ally, Xbox Ally, and Lenovo Legion Go 2 picks up fixes for spurious interrupts and NVMe resume failures. So, gaming on these devices ought to be a little less hassle going forward. Outside of PC, the audio jack on the Sony DualSense controller works properly. Linux 6.18, plugging a headset into the controller will now work as expected, i.e. sound switches to headphones, microphones, works, speaker volume adjusted. Then it says GPU, CPU, and NPU buffs. I rarely dwell on bringing up for chips. You can't, but yet, as of course, that work is happening, but it's happening bit by bit. So headlines as new bits get plumbed in and basic functionality now works feel routine rather than interesting. Take that stuff as read. Then it says, starting with Linux 6.18, the open source Novi graphics driver will default to using the NVIDIA GPU system processor GSP firmware on Turing and Ampere GPUs. As a part of a broader cleanup, power management tweaks, also features. Then it says the Intel P-state driver is able to enable hardware P-state HWP without energy performance preference EPP limits when the new dynamic efficiency control DEC features is turned on, and better scaling on Meteor Lake devices. Then it says Linux 6.18 ships with a new Rust DRM driver for ARM Melee GPUs, albeit in initial efforts and not yet ready for prime time usage. And then it says in blue here, ARM Melee GPUs can use a new Rust DRM driver, though it's not finished. It says a collaboration by Calibora, ARM and Google engineers. The driver is a port of Panther that exposes Panther UAPI and named to user space. The aim is to incrementally develop by TYR until it is considered to be in parity with Panther features wise. Then it says SICK in brackets. And it says here a new rocket accelerator driver for our Rock chip SoC features support for multiple NPU cores. Dynamic frequency scaling could make our Rock chips base boards better for AI/ML workload without external GPUs. Then it says subtopic sheaves, shaves, and sharing. It says Linux 6.18 arrives with sheaves. These are per CPU cache for slab allocation, which is a fancy way of saying each processor core now has its own stash of memory object to allocate and free. It says here, instead of CPU fighting over a shared pool of memory object, each sheaf can do its own thing. Faster memory management should mean snappier multitasking for everyone, not just for those running intensive server loads, although especially for those. It says, BCA chefs removed from kernel 6.18. Okay. It says here, the biggest file system change in Linux 6.18 isn't something that was added, but something that has been removed, namely BCA chefs file system code. Anyone working on or experimenting with BCA chefs will need to compile it manually in Linux 6.18. It says, why was BCA chefs removed, or Bay chefs removed from the Linux kernel? It says ostensibly because of issues in Bay chefs maintainer can't overstreet following a proper development process. Rather than issues with file system code, overstreet continually submit new features late. And it says at the point at which the kernel code is in bug fix only mode. It says the approach irritated Torvald to the point he marked Bay chefs or BCA chefs code externally maintained in Linux 6.17, which plans to remove it wholesale in 6.18, and he has. Another subtopic, file system and storage. It says, thankfully, there's better news for fans of other file system. It says exFAT, and then it says in blue, exFAT optimization delivers 16x speed up in load times on SD card, USB drives, etc. It says here, Ubuntu users will benefit from small extension 4 tweaks in Linux 6.18 like IOC T1 support in Tune 2FS support for 32-bit reserve UIDs and GIDs, ranges in the removal of legacy config options. It says use a lot of SD cards, USB drives, and similar, question mark. Then it says exFAT drivers optimization delivers a heft 16x speed up in load time. Elsewhere, Fuse is furnished with support for direct copies of memory range larger than 32-bit boosting performance in copy operation. It says here XFS enables online FSCK by default, a feature previously considered experimental. This allowed XFS to repair itself when the file system is mounted and in use. Then it says other tidbits. BTRFS file system gains better parallelism for read-heavy workload and support for block size greater than page size, while a new device mapper targets DM Pcache offers a high throughput, low latency, and persistent cache layer. Yeah, there. Anyway, it says subtopic: improved laptops and PC hardware support. It says here Linux 6.18 bring initial support for haptic touchpads. Then it says in parentheses, where clicks are simulated rather than mechanical, while Ubuntu supports for Snapdragon X Elite laptops get a boost thanks to a new EC driver for Lenovo ThinkPad T14S Gen 6. Then it says a new keyboard driver for Xiaomi Redmi Book laptops get function FN and backlight keys working under Linux, along with Xiaomi specific AI button. Pressing this sends a key assistance key code that desktops can respond to by opening an app, etc. Yeah. It says here, if you own an Alienware 16 Aurora, Alienware M, Alienware X, or Dell G Series laptop, you'll be pleased to hear Linux 6.18 WMI WMAX driver supports fan control, sensor reporting, and per zone RGB lighting control. HP Omen laptop gained fans control support in the HP WMI driver. Then it says an array of ASUS motherboards are now supported by the Linux 6.18 HWMON driver, meaning more sensors should accurately report their reading when queried. These include the ROG Strix X670E, X870-1, X870E-1, Z690-E, and Z790E gaming Wi-Fi models. It says similar HP Omen laptops gain fan control support in the HP WMI driver. It says beyond that, further work to support running Linux on Apple M2 Pro Max and Ultra chips, although this works is incremental and difficult, is another step forward. Full Linux usability on Apple Silicon based laptops and PCs. Then it says notable security changes in Linux 6.18. It says security in Linux 6.18 sees a broad set of improvements, including support for signing BPF programs, which means dynamically load code can be verified for integrity before it's run. The audit subsystem is smarter and able to support multiple Linux security modules, LSMS. Says here being enabled at the same time, making it easier to stack SC Linux, AppArmor, and other Linux security framework together. Then it says, and although Linux 6.18 disables TPM bus encryption by default, this doesn't leave your laptop less secure as a result. Turns out the feature was broken and causing performance slowdowns. Ergo, faster laptops and just as secure as it was. Then it says other changes. It says here the network subsystem C boost with UDP received performance better by as much as 47%, owing to low level optimization, which primarily are aimed at improving system resilience under DDoS or DDoS condition, letting it handle floods of UDP packets better. Then it says Rust binding have been expanded further to cover more important kernel APIs, and that's API and then lowercase s. And it says, and there's an initial framework for USB driver Rust binding. And it says in parentheses, albeit no actual driver to use yet. And it says, expect to even more Rust related changes in Linux 6.19. It says here, beyond the highlights above, other notable changes in Linux 6.18 includes scheduler improvements with fairer NUMA balancing, swap subsystem revamp boost, throughput under memory pressure, KVM support for Intel Dynamic Efficiency Control DEC. It says TCP accurate ECN support to improve network congestion controls. It says namespace file description makes containers management easier. And then it says NFS server scalability via prototype, disabling of I/O caching. And it says for more details on the release, as whole reads through the comprehensive merge reports recaps. Then it says first half and second half. And then it says from LWN, or scan the thousands upon thousands of kernel commits on GitHub. We'll leave those links. And it says with a coffee and a sleeping bag to hand. It says upgrade to Linux 6.18. Linux 6.18 is available for download from kernel.org. And it says, we'll leave that link too. It says as source, but you will need to compile that source code to enjoy the benefits. A good learning experience, ? Sure. A fun experience, ? Depend on your personality. It says if you're on a stable Ubuntu release, you don't get Linux 6.18 as an official update via the Ubuntu repositories, but there are unofficial, and this then says in parentheses, e.g. canonical mainline debs, DEB lowercase s, third-party PPA with a lowercase s, and it says source available not without caveats, mines. It says upgrading to a newer Linux kernel on Ubuntu using source outside of the official repos comes with no guarantees, no support, and potential security risk. Such kernel may lack Ubuntu-specific patches and driver for Ubuntu certified hardware. It says here Ubuntu 26.04 daily builds will get Linux 6.18 as an update in the coming weeks, as canonical kernel development policy now loops in version which aren't the target kernel for an eventual stable Ubuntu release. Then it says in parentheses, which for 26.04 is version 6.19 or whatever comes after. And that is that. So yeah, you Linux nerds, you're good. You and your Linux kernel, indulge yourself. If you want to learn this, talk to people with experience, on how to get help from those guys. They will help, But if you want to learn on your own, well, it's best that you have two PCs, one running the stable Linux and then one you mess around with. You get the point. Now, any comments in the comment section here? Let's see. Anybody got any comments? Going once, going twice. Got about 5 comments here. let's see here. Linux Gamer said this. I can certainly see it will. Raccoon will get kernel. He said, but I can certainly see it will Raccoon get kernel. And then Linux Gamer says, there will come a time when Linux gaming will overtake. We already know what that means. But anyway, and then who is this? This is Lead Bag. He said this. Firefox is big tech. Them saying they are trying to save. Anyway, and then Mighty Pencil says this. Well, I thought it was a bit funny. And then he said, stupid is. And then Dragon said this. I wonder when the Ubuntu daily builds will get the... And that's it. So yeah. But other than that, you guys are good though. You and your Linux kernel, you got you some new gaming updates for Linux kernel 6.18. But then you also get some scheduler improvements with fairer NUMA balancing and swapping subsystem revamp boost, throughput under memory pressure, KVM support for Intel Dynamic Efficiency Control, DEC. Then you get TCP accurate ECN support to improve network congestion control. Then you get namespace file descriptors make container management easier. And then you get NFS server scalability via prototype disabling of the I/O caching. So you Linux kernel experts, geniuses, engineers, troubleshooters, you got your hands full with this one. So have fun with this. And for you beginners, there's always help out there. Learn from the experts. I mean, you can mess with it yourself, but never be scared to ask questions. Or better yet, questions were meant to be asked. So yeah. So you guys are good. The K chef or the BC chef removed from kernel 6.18. Yeah, I'm sure the experts guys don't like that. And then sharing. Yeah. And it says ARM Melee GPUs can use a new Rust DRM driver, though it's not finished. And we already know what the Rust developer said about Linux gaming. Matter of fact, somebody from the Rust development crew stepped down too, by the way. And then you have the GPU, CPU, and NPU buffs. Yeah. You guys are good. So yeah, and then you have the gaming device improvements. Yeah. Steam Deck LCD and OLED model benefit from this. And when the Steam machine comes out next year, it will benefit from it too. It's not exempt. So yeah, GPD. Who else? WinMax 4 and 2. Who else? Asus ROG, Asus ROG and the Xbox Ally, they benefited. Lenovo, yeah. And Sony controllers benefit from it too. Oh yeah. So you gamers, you're good, man. Linux kernel got you covered. Yeah. Now, let's see here. What does Neo Win got to say on this? Let me see if I can see if I can get him too. And of course, I'm going to Phoronix right in the same process. What it says here: Linux 6.18 kernel lands with Asus ROG Ally. Lenovo Legion Go 2 fixes. Says Linus Torvald has announced the final release of Linux 6.18 kernel following a high volume of last-minute bug fixes. The final week of our testing includes minor fixes to drivers and random fixes in areas like Bluetooth, SEP, and AFS. The kernel brings several important Linux 6.18 kernel features, including an Asus ROG Ally Linux fix, and this says Xbox Ally, and a fix for Lenovo Legion Go 2, understanding the Linux 6.19 merge window delay. It says with the Linux 6.18 kernel release being pushed, The merge window for Linux 6.19 is now open, giving developers the opportunities to submit their new features ready for several months of testing. While the last few weeks kernel have been released on time, Linux 6.19 is going to be delayed because the merge window coincide with the year kernel maintainer summit. So Torvald will be traveling during the second week. This is why Linux 6.19 merge window delay is expected. It says here to address this, he plans to complete a bulk of the merging before traveling. The summit may mean that the RC1 release may be delayed slightly, and any late merge window pull request will not be accepted. Linux 6.19 is scheduled for release in February, with there potentially being a 1 week delay. This could lead to there being an 8th release candidate. Then it says how to install Linux 6.18. Says here, now that Linux 6.18 is available, you generally do not want to try compiling it and running it yourself, as this will most likely lead to broken system. Instead, you should wait for your distribution maintainer to make it available via the update manager. This is part of the general Linux kernel update guide for users. Once installed, you will just reboot your system. The first distribution that will get the update are Arch-based distros and bleeding edge system like Fedora. If you're on Ubuntu-based distribution, you don't get it immediately and may have to wait for a new version. These different Linux distros updates are typical for a Linux kernel release. And then it says, unlike Windows, where you install third-party drivers in Linux, they are usually included in the kernel, so when you boot Linux, everything should just work. However, if you have newer hardware, these kernel updates are important because they mean some of your hardware that didn't work before now does. This includes the notable Sony DualSense headphone jack fix that Linux users have been anticipating. And that is that. Yeah. Let me see here. Let's see. That is that. So yeah. Now to see Phoronix. Let's see what they got on this. And I'm finished here. Phoronix. Got to knock this out, you know. See what Phoronix got on this. Okay, Phoronix, where are you? I know you're here. I know you have the Linux 6. I know you have it. Oh, here we go. They do. It says here, Phoronix said this, Linux 6.18 release with many new features, likely this year's LTS kernel. It says here, Linux 6.18 stable is now available. Linux 6.18 users in many new features and changes while also is expected to become this year's long-term support LTS kernel version. Linux 6.18 was just tagged in the Git and being pushed out. Now to kernel.org, Linux 6.18 features more Apple Silicon upstreaming this time around. The M2 Pro /Max /Ultra device trees. Intel continuing to bring up Wildcat Lake platform support. The introduction of the new sheaves code, Novia by default, and Ampere and Turing will rely on NVIDIA GPU systems. Predecessor GSP firmware where available XFS online FSCK being enabled by default. Haptic touchpad support, merging of DMs, Pcache, and many other changes. Says Linux 6.18 is coming in heavy on a new feature while also performing well in my benchmark thus far, with not having noticed any real regression over Linux 6.17. See the Linux 6.18 feature overview to learn more. about the changes coming in this new kernel, with Linux 6.18 being the last major kernel version to make it out this calendar year. It's anticipated to become the 2025 Linux LTS kernel to be maintained for an extended period of time, though how many years will it be maintained under the LTS flag remains to be seen, based upon our stakeholders' interest, usage, support, if it will manage to become a 5-6 year kernel or not, says, with Linus Torvald now having released Linux 6.18 stable. It's on to Linux 6.19 merge window for the next 2 weeks. There are many notable features improvement on the table for Linux 6.19, and that should do it. So you Linux users, you're good. You and your Linux 6.18 kernel, have fun with it, indulge. If you run into a problem, ask the experts. They can help you. Always ask questions. And yeah, the Linux nerds, Linux kernel nerds, geeks, engineers, experts, yeah, masters, they'll help you with it. So yeah, have fun with this one. And gaming on the Linux side, benefit a whole lot from this. So good on Linus Torvald to release the last one for 2025. So the next one is 6.19, so expect that sometime in February. So when that come out, I'll keep you in the loop. Anyway, hope you guys enjoyed the video. Thanks for watching. Hope it was beneficial, and see you guys next time. Bye for now.